show the picture again. I'm glad that you brought up that he's a white representative that represents black districts, because guess what? They had the opportunity to choose. This is about taking away black Americans' opportunity to choose who they want to represent them. So whether that is white Representative Cohen, if that is Representative Pearson, who's black, who's running for that same district, who is, running against Cohen. The bottom line is, it was set up, the Article 2 of the Voting Rights Act was set up to allow my community to have the choice, because so many choices have been taken away from us. And so when you take that.
What's up, y'all? Welcome back. Today we'll be talking about this whole gerrymandering situation. Republicans across the South are trying to dilute the black vote all across black communities. It just happened in Memphis, where they just got split between 3 congressional districts, therefore diluting the black vote in Memphis. And it's happening in Louisiana, it's happening in Mississippi, and it's happening in Alabama. And the scary thing here is that it's taking the South back into a new era of Jim Crow. If you're paying attention, like, instead of that one community being able to vote for that one candidate, they're splitting that community in 3 parts. So those votes within that said community is diluted between 3 different candidates. This is what we saw in Jim Crow, people. Let's take a look at this video. I hope y'all enjoy it. Of course, I'm gonna provide y'all my opinion. And yeah, let's get into it.
We have to recognize that this redistricting was done in response to the Supreme Court decision to weaken the civil rights law, the Voting Rights Act, which was put in place to protect African Americans' right to have representation. And right now, this is so awful what's happening in our country with all this gerrymandering on both sides. It's awful. It's terrible for our country, because you create these safe Republican seats, these safe Democratic seats, and the general election doesn't matter because you're going to win anyway. You only have to worry about the primary, and everybody just panders to their base to win the primary, and that's dividing our country further. And so it's very much race involved. I can't stand the fact that you're splitting up Memphis into 3 different congressional districts. That's awful that you're cutting up communities like that. And that's happening in places throughout our country right now, and it's bad for America.
Are you?
I'm glad somebody's finally able to admit it, especially a white guy that's finally able to admit that this is because of race. This is being done along the lines of race. Like, there's no way that you can ignore that. They're targeting black communities. They're looking at black communities and finding ways to split those communities up. And that's what Mississippi is currently looking at. That's what Louisiana is currently doing. Alabama too.
Opposed to the gerrymandering efforts in New York as
I'm
well.
Opposed
they got rid of
I'm opposed to all
seats.
gerrymandering. I've always been opposed to gerrymandering. It's bad for the country to set up these seats like this. We should have independent redistricting. We should allow independents to vote. We should have open primaries. But this is being done in response to what took place in Texas. And there's going to continue to be this tit for tat. They'll do this, then we'll do that, then they'll do this, then we'll do that. And it's bad for America. And this is making it worse.
I think
Yeah, and he's right about that. It did start with Texas. When Trump called for Texas to get him more House seats, that's when they started redistricting their own maps mid-decade. And that allowed them to add more seats to their House, to the House for Trump, and this made Trump happy. But the only thing, like, once Texas started doing what they doing, that's when California started doing what they was doing. And this is pretty much a race to the bottom, and we all have to acknowledge that. Like, this is a race to the bottom, and if everybody gerrymandered their states to the maximum, Republicans would not win this. They're not going to win this. The blue states have more opportunity to gerrymander and create more blue seats than Republican seats. That's just clear as day.
We also have to understand that Black Americans have faced barricade after barricade after barricade in front of them forever for voting. So to take a majority Black district like Memphis and split it up, pull it into 3 separate sections so it goes into rural Tennessee. If you aren't familiar with the state, they're taking a Black district and stretching it out so that the white voters overtake the Black voters in those 3 districts. That's deliberately trying to make one party have no representation. It is an abuse of power. We should say that. This is not just...
Yeah, exactly. And it's diluting the black vote. This is targeting black people specifically. And just a week ago, this was unconstitutional. Like, let's be honest here. The white people in politics in these different Republican states will not be on the good side of history.
Just a Black voter problem, because if anyone thinks their vote should count, this is a problem. This is starting with black voters, but it'll carry on to all of us. The bottom line is Trump and the MAGA Republicans are losing. People are not happy with how they are running the country. So they are desperate to control the outcome of elections by stripping away their opponent's power piece by piece, particularly in the South where they have the most control. We need a national ban on gerrymandering. It doesn't matter what party we have. Any law that limits who can vote, how they can vote, if their vote is counted, is wrong. We need fair, nonpartisan maps. Take a grid to the entire country if you have to. We shouldn't have what happened in Texas, in Florida, in Oklahoma, and yes, in California and Virginia. That should not be happening. It should be fair, and if you are someone that believes that your vote should count, you should be angry. You do not have to be a black American for this to happen.
They're not going to do that. They're not going to pass anything to ban gerrymandering, because if Republicans ban gerrymandering, that's going to be the single most detrimental act for the Republican Party in politics. Like, gerrymandering is the only reason Republicans have any power at this point, congressionally. So if they remove gerrymandering, it would be like one of the worst decisions for the Republican Party.
But you should be angry on behalf of black Americans that it's happening to them again.
Let me play an exchange that a Democratic state lawmaker had with a Republican about how they managed to carve up the black voters in the state in the way that they did.
So is that correct that the census data was the sole basis for drawing these lines from 2020?
Speaker Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, it's my understanding the census was used to draft the map you have in front of you.
Chairman Clement.
Based on the population.
Okay, well, that's pretty interesting because census data doesn't include any partisan scores or partisan data. And your whole entire argument this entire week has been that this is about politics and partisanship. So if you solely relied on census data, I'm confused about how you knew partisan scores when drawing this map, if that wasn't even considered.
Speaker Zachary.
Thank you. Did you have a question?
That's crazy. He didn't even answer the question. And that's because you're not supposed to be gerrymandering even now along the lines of race, or you can't admit it, or you would be risking having everything taken to court. So he was very smart by not admitting that they only looked at census data and not racial data or any type of partisan data to draw these maps. He's very smart by not admitting that and not answering that question. It's just crazy that he refused to answer that question because everybody knows the real answer, right?
He doesn't answer the question because it is a good question. Are they using just census data, or are they using race as a proxy for partisanship? And is that really, I mean, is that a smokescreen for carving up black voters?
I mean, you use proxies for partisanship based on socioeconomic factors, on income, on
Race.
geography, on zip code.
On race.
I've frankly have never seen that in any analyses that I've seen, though prior to the Cali decision.
And he's being dishonest. He's being very dishonest right now because he knows that these maps are being drawn targeting black communities. He knows this. He just can't admit it on TV.
They would look at race to figure out whether or not they're in compliance of Section 2 of the VRA. Now we're in a different world where we're not cabineting specific districts. Just like to state for the record, this is the guy who is currently representing that area.
So what? I mean,
but we had
I don't
these
understand.
independent redistricting.
It shouldn't matter whether or not a white guy's representing Memphis, as long as Memphis was able to choose that guy. That's what we're arguing here, is that the black community, or these historical black communities that's been in the same district for I don't know how long, should not be broken up amongst 3 different districts because they are no longer able to choose the candidate that they want to represent them. That guy that you just held up, that's a person that they chose, regardless if they're black or white.
What's the point of pointing out that Steve Cohen as well?
My point, we have the same issue in Michigan where we have an independent redistricting commission, right? It's independent. There's always going to be politics and gerrymandering, regardless of how you try to dress it up with nonpartisan commissions, you can try to control for the partisanship, but you're never going to eliminate that element. But I will say that, but the rich irony is that in both California and Virginia, they had independent redistricting commissions. They wanted to reform it, and then they cast off the shackles of the principles as soon as it was politically convenient.
Well, they asked the voters.
Yeah.
Unlike any of the other states that did not ask the voters.
Yeah, let's not act like, these blue states did have independent gerrymandering committees. They did. And they did get rid of those committees once Texas started doing what they did. That's the whole point, is that most blue states had independent committees to draw their districts. Southern states are not doing that. They're not pulling in independent committees. They're not having the people vote. They're not having anybody else have a say-so outside of their special sessions. And this is the scary part, is that they're going in back rooms in secret and drawing these lines for the future of the black community in places like Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee. This is not right. This is a new type of Jim Crow.
Actually deceive the voters depending on
I'm
how
actually
the
glad. Let's show the picture again. I'm glad that you brought up that he's a white representative that represents black districts, because guess what? They had the opportunity to choose. This is about taking away black Americans' opportunity to choose who they want to represent them. So whether
Exactly.
that is white Representative Cohen, if that is Representative Pearson, who's black, who's running for that same district, who is, running against Cohen. The bottom line is, it was set up, the Article 2 of the Voting Rights Act was set up to allow my community to have the choice, because so many choices have been taken away from us. And so when you take that away,
It is
when
a
you
little,
take, but that's the element we're going to focus on tonight.
Michigan. Let's look at
And so-
Michigan's congressional delegation.
Yeah.
I mean, there were a number of VRA seats that were drawn to make sure they had the appropriate amount of African American voters, which, the assumption there is on the partisanship. Not a single one of them is represented by an African American. Only representative.
Now they're the ones that's overly looking at race. What we're saying is that these said black communities should have the opportunity to choose the candidate that they want, whether that be white or black or even Republican or Democrat. Keep this black community together. If they want to vote in a Republican, they can. Chances are they're not. And everybody knows that. And that's why they're being broken up. That's the point.
You have to admit, it's a little ironic that the
that's-
woman now who is likely going to win the 9th district in Tennessee is a black Republican woman as a result of this redistricting effort. It's likely going to be a black Republican woman who beats that old white man.
I just wanted to make the basic point.
Do you understand the type of circus act that they're trying to pull on us? They injected a black Republican woman to run for this new gerrymandered seat that's barely touching a part of Memphis. The people that'll be voting for her is only 25% of Memphis maybe? The rest will be rural, white, Republican people. So majority of the people that's going to be voting for her in this new district will be white conservatives.
Point that in the presidential election, Trump got 65%, Kamala Harris got 35%. So it's easy to assume that Tennessee is 35% Democratic. Of the current 9 seats, 1 seat is Democratic. Of 35%, it would be 3 seats would be Democratic. Right now it's 1. Under this new redistricting, it'll be 9 Republican, 0 Democratic. That's just not right. And this is happening all over our country, and it's destroying our country.
Yeah, I mean, Republicans were just complaining about this very thing in Virginia a couple weeks ago. And so now this is an even more extreme example of how, putting aside race for a second, just if you're a Democrat in the state, you have no shot of having a representative that has your interests in mind in Washington at this point.
Exactly.
Which is similar to many places in the Northeast. And I will say, I think the Tennessee move is in direct retaliation. And I'll say retaliation because Hakeem Jeffrey said it was maximum warfare. That's what he said after the Virginia redistricting.
He was responding to Trump
who did it
redistricting
first.
Texas.
Right.
He didn't,
which was in
he didn't
response
say that.
to New
Why don't we
York,
just
which was
all
in
agree?
response
Why
to
don't we
the
all
Republicans.
agree?
Yeah, let's
Why don't we
not
all
do it.
agree? We're all
It's
different
true.
viewpoints. Why don't we all agree this is wrong? Gerrymandering is wrong. Safe seats is hurting our country because people do not listen to the people when they're in safe seats. They just pander to their base, and that's killing our country. Let's all agree. Conservative, liberal, moderate, all of us, whatever you guys are. Let's all agree this is wrong.
Agree. It's wrong.
And let's also agree.
Yeah, they won't be able to agree because the Republicans are not going to remove gerrymandering. They're not going to call off this war. They are not going to, because they realize if they do get rid of partisan gerrymandering, they're going to lose power on a big level. The Republicans understand that they are going to get beat very badly this midterms. That's why Trump is getting nervous and getting scared and demanding that different states create more Republican seats in preparation for this big loss that they expect to take this winter. So yeah, you kind of have to be aware of what's going on politically. The midterms are coming up. Things are not looking good for the Republicans, and they're getting very scared. And you can tell by the stuff that they're doing and how fast they're moving. I've never seen politicians move this fast. Never. They're passing stuff within weeks.
Agree that they won't
Lydia?
be changing it. And let's also agree it's time for tit for tat. I know you say you don't want tit for tat. I support tit for tat. If the
Well, this is the problem. We're not going to resolve anything. If
Oh, no,
tit
it's
for
okay.
tat.
But you guys want to go there, so let's go there. Let's tit for tat. And with Representative
Yeah, it's a race to the bottom, for real. It's a race to the bottom. Republicans started this. And if it's a tit for tat game, the Democrats are going to win at the end of it. And Republicans realize this. They know that if every blue state gerrymandered the way that Republicans are currently gerrymandering, the Democrats are going to come out with more seats than Republicans. That's simple math.
Pearson, the energy that he brought today, and I put it out on my social media, everybody was loving it. They're not going to change it. So crying about it's not going to make a difference. California's going to make up the difference. Organizing voters. Democrats need to flip the House and need to expand the Supreme Court because that's what this is about.
But where does this end?
It
Where
ends at
does
the
this
For the
end?
People's Act,
That's it.
which the Democrats tried to pass and all voted for, that banned partisan gerrymandering. It ends where we make money, dark money out of politics. It ends when you put Democrats who already voted for the John Lewis Voter Rights Act back in power, and you actually pass those things that make voter election day a holiday, that give us mail-in ballots, that give us safety in voting. All the things the Republicans are currently trying to rip away. Voter suppression started with gerrymandering, and then closing polling stations, and then limiting drop boxes, and then mail-in voting, and early voting, and same-day registration. Those are all taking away from certain communities that vote Democratic. We have to.
Yeah, and that's clear as day is that the Trump administration and the Republican Party, they're attacking voting from several different directions. They're attacking voting from the SAVE Act that's trying to add more restrictions around how you register. They're trying to make it so that you have to provide either a birth certificate or a passport just to register nationwide. They're also talking about putting ICE in front of the voting locations. They're also doing this gerrymandering mess, diluting the black vote. They're attacking voting across this country in several different directions. And what I'm saying is that Democrats seems to be the only ones that's interested in expanding voting and making it safe at the same time. They're talking about making it so that voting is a national holiday so people can actually take off from work and go vote. You know, that should have been a thing a long time ago if we're expecting every American to participate in this process. Things like mail-in voting, stuff like same-day registration. These things are important to making sure that every American in this country has a voice. The problem with Republicans are there's no widespread proof that there's voter fraud. There's no widespread proof that illegals are voting in federal elections. So what they're doing is saying, for fear of maybe one person voting illegally, they're going to kick over 1,000 people off of the voter rolls to try and get to that one person. You get what I'm saying? They're disenfranchising 1,000 Americans just to stop one illegal from voting. That's the concern that a lot of Americans are having, because if you're trying to kick off thousands of Americans in your journey to try and get to illegals, that's not helping anybody. It's only helping the Republicans.
To
I also
stop
think
doing that. And it ends when you put Democrats in charge and you actually pass the laws that they tried to pass before and all voted for and Republicans voted against.
It ends with Democrats in charge. That's
Yes,
the goal.
and that's
Okay, that is the goal. That's why the gerrymandering happened in
voter
Virginia.
protections. And
But look, I mean, listen,
This is why the gerrymander keeps happening.
But Lydia,
Republicans are doing it in response to that.
should Republicans end put their weapons down and say, hey,
They actually
let's
did.
stop.
They actually did. In Indiana, they tried to do just
Wait a
that. They said,
second.
you know what?
No, that's a straight lie. If you're paying attention to anything in politics, yes, there was a few Republicans in Indiana that did vote against gerrymandering, but those very same Republicans up there got pushed out of the party by Donald Trump because they voted against it. You can't claim that. Your leader wants them to go to war. Like, that's the point.
That is not a
In
good
Indiana,
example.
they said, we're not going to gerrymander.
Hold on, Lydia. That is not what happened, okay? Republicans did not say we're going to stop doing this. Some
They actually
Republicans
voted against it.
voted against it, and then
Right.
they were targeted by the president this week and 5 out of 7 of them voted out of their seats. And while that was happening down in Florida,
but this
a
is the
Republican
reality.
governor, Ron DeSantis, said that he was going to redistrict his state to eliminate Democratic
But that was a
representation.
moment.
There is no ceasefire happening on the part of Republicans.
That was
I don't want
a
a
ceasefire.
ceasefire.
And in
there was
response
not.
to the
This ceasefire's not as good as the
ceasefire, in
ceasefire
response
in
to
Iran
the
right now.
ceasefire,
This lady is lying on live television. That was not a ceasefire. There was a couple of Republicans doing something that Trump did not want to do. And because they did something that Trump didn't want, they got pushed out of the party. That's clear as day. Like, that's not a ceasefire. A ceasefire is a group, the whole Republican Party agreeing that we need to stop, not a few outliers that got pushed out by the leader. That's not how that works. That's not a ceasefire.
Indiana, Virginia said, hold my beer, let me get rid of all of the wrong
Lydia,
votes.
you know, it wasn't a ceasefire, it was more like a mutiny. And President Trump hated the fact that they pushed back on him. And you know why he hated it so much? He hated it because
So that
it's
doesn't count,
not,
Indiana? That just
it's-
doesn't, no one
I'm
cares.
Just saying,
No one
that's
cares
not
that they
the same-
opted not to
That's not the
gerrymander?
same thing as Republicans saying, we're not going to gerrymander anymore, because at the same time that was happening, they were planning to gerrymander in Florida.
But you know what? No, you know what? All of those Republicans who were upset were right. Because Indiana said, we're going to stop it. And then
And guess what? We don't want
Virginia decided to
and we don't
gerrymander.
want
So they
it.
were
And then
proven right.
Republicans spent $6 million voting them out of their seats.
Yeah, and that's wild. It's crazy what these Republicans are trying to do all across the South while lying to the American people on live television. But I digress. I just wanted to show y'all this video. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Please like and share and subscribe. And yeah, I'll see y'all next time.